Well, hello there. Welcome to Literary as Feck with myself, Nicholas O'Shea Khan, and the other fellow over there.
I'm Clive Davis.
Who is Italian today. And now I've lost my Irish accent as a result of him doing that.
I am Jared Leto in the House of Agucci.
Awesome. Great to have you here, Jared.
Nice to be here.
So this time we're talking about a book which I don't even remember the name of right now. That's great. An easy thing.
Well, that gives me the perfect point here to interject.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm going to derail your train here because
okay.
I'm thinking every now and again, and you're quite well, this is the first time we've done this, so I apologize for pouncing on you, but you're quite welcome to do this yourself at any point in the future, if you feel the need to do so.
Yes, and any of our watchers who like things to be scheduled and orderly, we do apologize for
right off.
For yes, pushing you way outside your comfort zone with this unexpected sudden interjection.
Right, or ejaculation, as Watson.
Yes, as Watson would say. He ejaculated loudly.
Yeah, I do. You can hear it. The neighbors are always complaining. So, yes. So basically, this is a show and tell portion of the show, which if you happen to have been reading something else other than we're going to discuss, and you have a burning desire to tell me and the listener about it, then please feel free to interject, as I am about to do now, because I recently read Jokos Anniversary by Roland Topor, author of The Tenant.
Okay.
Because recently on another podcast, The Magic Morning Wood, that I do, we did the movie The Tenant, and I decided to read the book that it's based on, which I hadn't read before, by Roland Topor, which was a great read, which I then recommended to my wife, who read it in Japanese translation. And then the local library had this book, Jokos Anniversary, in Japanese translation, which she read and then quickly told me, if you thought The Tenant was good, you need to read this, which does seem to be a play, I think, maybe originally was written as a play. And I will just read you the first paragraph, just to give you a flavor. This is chapter 1. Get down, please. For the 2 years he'd been employed at Mr. Barotto's plant, Joko had always been on time for work. That morning, however, he hadn't heard the alarm clock and he had to hurry so as not to be late. All of a sudden, as he turned a corner, someone jumped on his back and straddled him. And thus we go from there. And this book just gets progressively weirder and weirder and very fucking dark towards the end. And reading this, I was like, yeah, Nick, you need to read Jokos Anniversary because you would love it.
Where is Roland from?
He's French.
Okay.
And he was also, I think, not a lot of his stuff has been translated into English, but The Tenant has some short stories, which oddly enough, my wife's reading some of his short stories, and she's so on some of them apparently. But he was also well known as an illustrator, and I think he must have done these quite awesome illustrations.
Wow. Those are excellent.
And I think he was also one of the designers on. Do you remember an animated French film called, I think in English, Fantastic Planet? Or Planet yeah. Well, that's Roland Topor.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that even further piques my curiosity. Okay. All right.
As soon as I finished it, I was like, yeah. If Nick, I'll do the Werner Herzog thing about, if you don't like this book, I will eat my shoe. Yeah. So there we go. And also a recommendation to our listeners as well. But yeah, definitely worth a read.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So there
so we're talking about PACO IGNACIO TAIBO II today, who is a Spanish-Mexican author, emigrated from Spain as a young child,
Does he come from Basque Spain? Because his character is.
He is from northern Spain. I can't remember, but yeah. So, and his family, it seems like his dad was quite an ardent socialist under Franco. Hence their decision to leave. They didn't leave during the Civil War. They were there, I think, up until the 50s. So not a safe place to be an ardent socialist. So they moved to, and it seems like his father was also like PACO Ignacio TAIBO the first, was also a writer and a journalist.
Yes, it seems yes, I did look him up. He seems to be, both of them seem to be fairly prolific as well. Especially the son, the second, who we'll be talking about, seems to have written a shitload on fiction and non-fiction and all sorts. Not all available in English though.
And interestingly, for anyone who follows any other shows we might do, the second, PACO, was quite intensely involved in the events that led up to that massacre that took place in during the Olympics, the run up to the Olympics in Mexico in '68.
But I don't know what's that going to do. Those two guys are assholes. That's nothing to do with us who do that show. The film.
Oh yeah, right. But it's funny. It's just that this is something that's come up repeatedly ever since we watched those two films. I'd never heard of this event at all, and now it keeps showing up. It's very disturbing the way that happens in life. It's when somebody says the word widget, and then you hear it 7 more times that day.
Right.
But anyway,
I know what you mean.
So he does seem to have been a student kind of revolutionary, and then he goes on to, but unlike Daniel Cohn-Bendit, who was involved in the kind of the Paris '68 uprising, or your Jerry Rubens, who was involved in the stuff that happened in the US. It seems like he's kept the faith, has PACO. Like he's maintained his kind of leftiness, and then but just kind of found an outlet for it in this series of detective books. So he's considered to be the founder of this whole school of like neo-political crime books that not just in Mexico, but apparently in other South American and Central American countries, they've kind of run with this thing that he does. But he's considered to be the creator of this whole genre of kind of, and it's funny, I didn't necessarily know, a friend of mine recommended his books to me way long ago, like maybe end of high school, early university, and I never took him up on it. And a friend who is an interesting guy in and of himself, and so it was a thing that my mind came back to it when I was thinking of things we could read, and I was thinking, well, we haven't read a huge number of, and it's funny because I was thinking we haven't read a huge number of like writers who aren't Caucasian European, but then it turns out that he is. He's not necessarily indigenous Mexican at all.
Yes, this is as far as we'll go.
Apparently, yes. Just living there is enough. Because I didn't realize that he was actually Spanish, that he was kind of an immigrant to Mexico. But in any case, so yeah, this is a detective book, and I guess it's not the first. I thought this was the first, but this is the first that was published in English, but not actually the first book featuring this character.
This character being, and maybe I should leave this to you. You're better at Spanish.
I don't know about that. The name is quite. Even the book makes fun of the fact that the name is a mouthful.
Hector, I'm good with that. That's not the difficult bit. And Shane, that's all right. It's the bit in the middle.
And if it's northern Spain, it might be the TH version of S, like Belascoran.
Hector Belascoran Shane.
Yeah.
We'll call him Hector.
Let's call him Hector. Yeah, he's a private investigator in Mexico City. This is one of his adventures.
And this was originally published, I think, in 1977, right, in Spanish, but wasn't translated until quite a bit later. We have the Poisoned Press edition. Yes. Which I quite like the cover too, I have to say. I quite like this painting by Nicholas Greenwood. I quite like. Yeah, so this is the England, and like you said, I think it's fairly early in the series. It's like the second or third or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
And like we said, he did write a shitload of other stuff as well, but this is certainly what he's most well known for, at least in translation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of others of the Hector series are in English. I'm not sure.
Well, so when I was originally looking, I do remember it was this around the same time that I started to read a lot of the kind of trying to find the old gold medal Jim Thompson books and things like that. And I would go into secondhand bookstores and I was seeing these smaller looking paperbacks of his stuff. So there were some of them printed in these kind of more like cheapy looking. So yeah, there was some publishing house that was definitely putting them out back in the 80s.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And this is fun. I think I did buy one and I had it for years and I just never got around to reading it.
I wonder if they're hard to find now or pricey or if they're, a dime a dozen. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was a first read for me. I'd never read any of PACO before.
Right.
And I mean, should we do a quick plot synopsis as much as?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to go ahead? I mean, because he's kind of saddled with three, not all mystery. Well, yeah, basically three mysteries to solve. Yeah, 3 cases.
Yes, yeah. He takes on 3 cases at the same time,
and he shares his office with like an upholsterer.
Yep.
A sewer engineer who
and a plumber.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That piece of the story seemed really really Mexican to me in a really like pleasing way. Like,
Right. As did of the era, I'm guessing. There's this weird thing that took me a while to get used to is, so the main character is addicted to drinking like soda as well, right? Like soda pop and cans of soda pop. And also there's like this kind of a soda pop pool, I guess, with the other people in his building to buy that. But what was interesting was they never just pop open. It's always like a hassle to like tear open the can or find some way to. And I said, did these cans just come like an old like can of baked beans like back in the days, and like where you had to have a can opener to open them, or like none of them seem to be easy to open. Right? It's always a lot of it would have been bottled in Mexico, and it would have had those caps that you need to pry off with a bottle opener. But then the can, I mean, maybe Mexican cans. I mean, when I think back to the ones they had in Ireland that had those weird thing that would kind of curl off, and you'd always find them crushed everywhere on the roads, which are very different. But at least there was a ring pull. But these don't even seem to be ring. They always have to. It's always a thing to win them. I just found that kind of fascinating. Yeah,
we'll have to. This is clearly we have to research this. We'll get back to the next episode, folks.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, he takes these 3 cases on at the same time. One of which involves a kind of a Mexican soap opera star whose daughter has been threatened, more or less, right?
Well, she's attempted suicide a couple of times, right? So he's actually been hired to stop her from harming herself.
Mm-hmm. And then there is somebody's hired him to find Zapata.
Emiliano Zapata. Well, this was interesting. Well, first I was slightly disheartened. So the note to the North American edition actually has a thing explaining who Emiliano Zapata is. And I was like, I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but I pretty much thought everyone's heard of Zapata, right? Even if it's only, Marlon Brando playing him in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm kind of slightly disheartened that the North American edition actually had to have a thing explaining to people who
probably, to be honest. Yeah, I would say. I mean, they're not big on world history in the US.
Right, I guess. But this was interesting as well. Yes, basically there's like a theory or several conspiracy theories that Zapata didn't die, wasn't killed in 1990.
Survived the Mexican Revolution and lived a full, long life.
And I looked this up a little bit, because I was kind of curious, and sure enough, this is based on, there are legends that he survived, and and all this. So that was kind of an interesting little rabbit hole. I don't know if anyone's ever written like a good book that's collected all the kind of myths around Zapata, but certainly I would read that. In fact, I would read that on this show. That sounds like something we would get to.
Yeah. And I think in that way, it's funny. He does seem to me to be the literary successor, maybe, to B. Traven, right? Who is another European writer who moves to Mexico and then gets caught up in kind of Mexican revolutionary politics, although he was actually there kind of at the tail end of the revolution and stuff. And so for some reason that's part of the book reminded me of some of the Jungle Books that not to get confused with Rudyard Kipling, that B. Traven did. And also the whole mystery of B. Traven, like who is B. Traven, and the fact that more books are written about trying to figure out who the hell he was than dealing with his great body of literature.
Watch this space for more B. Traven.
Yes, yeah.
In the meantime, if you don't know, I suppose his most famous is Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which we won't be doing on the show, I don't think. We'll be doing something else. But yeah, if you've never read Treasure of the Sierra Madre, I mean, read it. It's great.
Or
and
Death
the
Ship.
film is awesome as well.
Or if read Death Ship.
Death Ship as well.
Which is a great page turner. Maybe read it back to back with The Sea Wolf by Jack London. Those are two great. Nautical as fuck, those books.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then the other case is, and I have to admit, because I read it piecemeal over several nights, the last case was the one that was hardest for me to parse. So you may have actually got a better clear understanding of what's actually going on with the case where he's hired by a kind of like some sort of combine, or like a where there's a strike happening. Are they steel? They're a steel company, right?
Yes, and then some kind of industrialist has been murdered, right? And I agree with you. And I don't think it's just I'm wondering if this is an element. Like, I get the broad strokes of it. Like, I get that there's this corruption, but it was never made crystal clear exactly what had happened or what so enraged the main character about the way things turned out. And I was wondering if this might have been an element based on something real life that wouldn't have had to have been spelled out to a Mexican audience, maybe, or it was badly written or badly translated, or we both weren't paying attention or something. But no, I agree with you. This was the least it like seemed to jump forward, like there were bits missing, or like clues we told about or something.
And because it also featured a series of characters who were gay, and there was this element where our lead character seemed to be mystified by the whole idea of the gay lifestyle. I mean, maybe that's an element of it being written in the 70s, or maybe
there's like a line. Our main character, who's mostly sympathetic, has like a line. I've never known a gay. What do they do? Where do they hang out? That kind of.
So. And I couldn't quite figure out how this kind of this like gay milieu really fit into that. Like I just never figured out all the overlap there. So that was a bit.
To be honest, all the stories are a little bit sketched in, really. Like
woolly,
Yeah, the daughter one as well. I kind of get what was going on there, blackmailer, but it just jumps ahead. And then the Zapata thing is almost totally forgotten with until the very end.
Yes. Yeah. And that almost seems like it becomes then a fairy tale or a myth in that last moment of the book where
right so I don't think we need to go too much more than that into the plot machinations. And the character as well is, I mean, I like the character. I like the same character. He's not outstanding. He's like a lot of other kind of sloppy anti-hero, although sloppier than most, I would say.
Right.
But every now and again, possible of feats of superhuman strength and beating up people half his age and stuff like that. Tropes of this kind of, and it is very much in some way. I'm very aware of being, in some ways, an old-fashioned, the Broad walked into my office kind of PI thing. But I don't have a problem with that because that's an institution, right? Like that is over the years that has proved to be bulletproof. You can come back to that again and again and again.
Yeah.
As long as it's done well, it doesn't get old or boring, or that's fine. So I suppose, I don't know. For me, I overall felt quite favorable towards this book. Like, I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't a chore to read, and I'd certainly be keen to read other books in the series. More than that, though, I'd like to read The Shadow of the Shadow, which is a novel he wrote about a streetcar workers' strike in Mexico City in 1922. That sounds quite interesting.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of a little bit in the noir kind of vein. I guess a mystery or a detective novel. That sounds quite, I think that's the one I'll probably try next. But I don't know, it felt a little, it didn't quite satisfy me in the way I was expecting it to. Like when you not recommended, when you suggested it, and you know, the cover and everything.
Right.
I thought this was a shoe. I thought that, yeah, and then when you read the introduction and the afterword and stuff, and you know, by people placing PACO, IGNACIO, TAIBO second in this, you know, in the context, and I was really revved up to, oh, this is going to be a new, like, this is going to be, I'm suddenly going to have to try and track down all his books, or, you know.
Okay.
And it wasn't, for me at least, it didn't quite do that for me. How did you get on with this book, Nick?
No, I would agree for sure, but I don't think I went into it with expectations quite so high. I think I went into it just kind of like, let's see how this goes. It was recommended many years ago, like his writing, and so I think what I liked was that, again, that sense of place.
Yes, that's
right.
I
felt like I had a better handle on Mexico, and what I think I liked about it, and in this way, I think you're right, it does have those tropes of the kind of the lone wolf hero, but he's always placed within a context of like society, whether that's, you know, that they introduce us to his sister and his brother, and that we get to know his mom and his dad through kind of, well, they've passed away, right? But we get a bit of this, and then he's got these kind of the three guys he works with, you know, and so those scenes were what really brought the book to life.
Yeah, same here. The family are fascinating. What I like about the family is that so there's this kind of thing about the mothers died and they're all going to have this inheritance, and he doesn't want anything. And at first you're set up, oh no, is this going to be like, are they all going to be either scrabbling after the money, or he doesn't have it, but one of the brothers or sisters, you know, demands. But what I quite liked about them is they're all like uniformly, fuck that, we don't want that money. Money brings you nothing but pain. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I like the fact that they're all just, and they all, even though they're all kind of nursing their own personal wounds, and they're never on each other's cases. Like, they get on really well, kind of helping each other's wounds, you know.
That seemed very old world, and it seemed very Mexican to me. That seemed very Spanish and very Mexican. That kind of family is a place of comfort, and you just kind of like
refuge, right?
You have it's like a friendship, right? It doesn't have to be a place of battle and one-upsmanship and stuff. That seems a much more North American idea of family to me.
Right.
So I love that, and I loved, as I said, the buddies. One of my favorite scenes in the whole thing is when he goes back, and in order to kind of try to flush these guys out who have kidnapped the daughter of this soap opera star, he phones 100 hotels and phones in bomb threats to all of them. And at one point, he's tired, and like the sanitation engineer guy comes in. He's like, "Oh, I'll take over. This sounds great." And he gets more and more animated and more intense threats. And you know, Hector kind of sits back and is like, "This guy's doing a great job."
Yeah.
You know?
No, that was, I like that. I liked, like you said, somehow they just hand things over to, and also what I really liked as well is towards the end of the book, when some of the he's kind of taken out some of the bad guys, even though at great expense to himself.
Yes.
And others. I like the fact that he's just like, you know, what the fuck have I achieved? Like,
Yep.
You know, it
I've held it
reminded me
back
of
for a few weeks, maybe.
yeah,
You know.
it reminded me of there's like the sequel book to the French Connection, the setup, which the
Mhm.
French Connection 2 movie wasn't based on, where in the first few pages you basically find out that all the heroin that they seized was back on the streets like
Yeah.
the next day, right? Like
Mhm.
nothing's changed
Yeah.
at all. And I thought that was kind of fascinating how he's just, there's new people
Yeah,
to
it's
move into
broken.
those positions. Yeah.
It's broken, and I mean, like the book doesn't shy away, and I think that, you know, TAIBO was famous for being very critical of the PRI, right, the Party of Institutionalized Revolution, which was the ruling party in Mexico for many, many years, and was notoriously corrupt and right wing, despite
Right.
constantly spouting this idea that it was a direct growth out of Zapata and Pancho Villa
Right.
and stuff. When, you know,
But that's interesting as well. That kind of notion of somehow it's interesting on a slight tangent, but how certain words mean different things in different. Like we've discussed a little bit before, how if you're talking about the left and right wing in the political spectrum, they don't always necessarily map on exactly. Like left and right in North America doesn't exactly map onto left and right here in Japan, for example.
no,
And I was watching, there's a really great Italian movie, which I would recommend to you. You might have actually already seen it, from the late 70s, called Illustrious Corpses, where all these judges across Italy are being assassinated. And
I might, but I might not. Who is it?
You definitely dig it. It's, fuck, what's his name?
Rossi?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember watching I went through a phase of watching all of those kind of leftist.
Yeah.
But that might have actually
one.
been one.
There's a Damiani one, How to Kill a Judge, which is kind of around the same
Yes.
time. But this
Yes,
one is really, really good. I watched it recently.
Is Jean-Marie Volonté in it? Because he was in all of those.
No, it's what's his name? The French Lino Ventura.
Okay, so maybe not then.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very good.
Okay.
But what was interesting about it is, you know, you have all these, you know, characters claiming to be, you know, communists or members of the Communist Party, and they're all like really kind of wealthy, and you know,
oh yeah,
and then you realize, well, in Italy, I suppose it's communism as an anti-fascist stance,
yes,
rather than communism in and of it.
Let's share all of the goods equally. Yeah.
So that's kind of a fascinating thing. And watching that film at first, I was slightly confused, and then you look things up in the context and everything. So so that was.
But in fairness, Karl Marx himself had a fairly large bunch of servants in his home.
Yes.
Not a poor man. And Bakunin and well, Kropotkin was a prince, right? And you know, so a lot of those anarchists and socialists of the time were from they weren't going to be able to be from the agrarian classes, because those people didn't get to read or
yes, that's the other thing as well, isn't it? Is back in the day, it demanded a certain level of you had to start from a basic level to even be able to entertain
engage in any way with society, other than as a workforce.
So I think if we claw away at it, then I think that's the thing. Maybe you've hit the point there. I think I appreciate all the elements of this book and the background to it, and I like the ideas and I like the character more than I think the overall
or the story, right?
Yeah,
because I think that is a bit woolly and a bit all over the place. And
yes,
you know, I would say too, one of the things that when it first comes up in the book, I was like, you know, but then by the end I was fine with it too. Was the kind of underground radio DJ character that shows up early in the book, and I was like, this seems a bit trite maybe, or this is going to be a bit,
you warriors trying to make it back to Coney Island.
Exactly.
And
yet somehow it also worked. It worked fine.
Does. That's fine.
You know?
Also, it gave me a bit of a the other thing, I was like, I made a note of almost all the song titles and artists, because I was like, I thought this might be a good primer for some good music, maybe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I also made a list of the Visigoth kings of Spain.
To check which ones were murderers.
Yeah. No, it's just, it was one of those things I realized, yeah, like it was one of those blast. Oh yeah, that's something I vaguely know about, but actually know fuck all about, really, who exactly the Visigoths were. So yeah, that's another thing I'm gonna have to. So I like these things that send you off. But yes, I agree with you. It's good at that stuff, but just in and of itself as a novel, I'm not sure if it's a particularly
it's not
good read.
If we're going to talk about that kind of, it's not as tightly plotted as, say, like a Dashiell Hammett, or it's not as like, white knuckle as like a Jim Thompson, or like it's a. But then there's a comfort there, and as I said, I would quite happily spend more time in this city with these people.
Yeah, it's more in the rumbling. It's in the rumbling Chandler category more than it is Hammett, or so. And as in those books as well, to a certain extent, it's like the least interesting bits were actually when he was following the case.
Yeah,
like, I couldn't really give a shit who did it or why or anything. Yeah, like you said, it was when he was hanging out with the sanitation engineer, or all those little bits, or like when I suppose the bit of the film where the character comes across as most anti-hero like is when he ends up bedding a teenager with a broken arm.
Yes.
And yet you're not unsympathetic to it. Like, because he's not approaching it from the yes, I got myself some jailbait kind of
Catholic schoolgirl.
Yeah, he's not coming from that. Somehow he just kind of seems to fall into it, almost as if he's doing her a favor, like
now this is happening,
comforting her or something, rather than a notch on the bedpost kind of thing, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. He certainly is an interesting character. I did like his world weary, beat down.
Yeah, it surprised me that there isn't, that I'm aware of, like, that there isn't a movie or a TV series, because it seems right for that.
I was trying to cast it as well, like in my head. I couldn't really come up with anyone. Yeah. Did you?
No, because I think he need to be a bit heavy set too. I got the impression from all the candy he's constantly eating donuts and ice cream and stuff, that he's supposed to be a slightly bigger guy.
Right. A little thick around the waist. Yeah.
And then spoilers, but like he ends up with an eye patch by the end of the story and a cane, which just makes him slightly more of a character, I guess.
Yes. I'm wondering if that's something that carries on in later books and it becomes more of a signature. But no, I agree with it, and yeah, you'd think that would lend itself to like a episodic TV series as well, right? The origin episodes has him, and then in other episodes, there's the opening credits where he has the eye patch and like the Columbo thing, as far as I know, no, there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in Mexico it was because of the politics, but when I was reading about him, they were saying that, like, he goes to book readings and stuff in bookshops, and people show up to give him apples and stuff. Like, he's this folk hero, detective novelist, which is a weird thing to be. That's a little niche that I've never heard of anybody else inhabiting.
I'm wondering though if maybe some of that stuff is because of his other writing, which we're not privy to, maybe.
Okay, the more political stuff.
Yeah. Which is why I'm keen to read that Streetcar one, The Shadow of Shadows.
He does seem to have done a pretty definitive book about that 68 student thing, and then the army attacks on the kids.
Okay, I ordered another book about that, A Massacre in Mexico. So I just arrived the other day. So
okay, you're digging deep.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fascinating. I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's crazy that I had never heard of it before. It seems like you know, as I said, when we talked about the movies,
Those are the losers.
those guys who look suspiciously like us but aren't us.
Well, they're trying to rip us off, is what they're doing there.
Oh yeah. It's like the you know, the fake Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Paul Smith and whoever the other guy was.
Yeah, no one ever remembers who the other guy was.
No. But yeah, I think it's weird that like I knew all about Kent State, you know, I knew all about the left bank in Paris, but why didn't I know about, in many ways, this much worse thing that happened in Mexico?
Yeah.
And in the run up to the Olympics, it just seems like it should be an absolutely known thing, and yet never heard of it till I was 46.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, we all have blind spots. That's the thing, right? We all have blind spots, and you should never beat yourself up about not knowing about something, because something else you do know.
I'm not blaming myself though. I'm blaming.
I blame you thoroughly.
Okay, all right.
On behalf of yourself, so you don't have to.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Yeah. We'll share it out.
But I would definitely see myself again. I'm not going to binge read the rest of the Hector Belasquaran Shane. Oh, he is half Irish, which is interesting too for me. Books, but I think I will probably read them all, but I'll space them out, you know, one every 6 months or one a year kind of a thing, and quite happily come back to this world.
Do you think it's even possible to read them all in English?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. That said, it'd be a great challenge for me with my limited Spanish to see if what I could take out of, because I find my Spanish reading is better than my speaking.
Oh, okay.
Because there are a lot of cognates, because it is a Latinate language. So there's a fair amount of it, and you can actually get by. Once you know the connective words and the kind of the grammar words, you'll find that actually the more complicated the text is, the easier it becomes to read, if that makes any sense. Like the longer the words, the more likelihood is that they have a very similar English.
Thing is as well, though, you probably have that probably false belief that I have, which is, you know, after spending time in Japan and struggling with a massively different language, in comparison, it's like, I could learn Spanish in an afternoon.
In a week.
I'll learn French in the morning, Spanish in the afternoon, and Italian in the evening.
Yeah. I mean, I think Duolingo,
so, compared to this fucking language, that'll be a walk in the park, right?
But I did
to a certain extent.
I did do it for 2 years in university though, so it's not like I have no Spanish.
Right.
But yes, it is amazing. I mean, I have Chinese students, and even they're kind of mystified by the Japanese, you know, that they've used the Chinese characters, but also 3 other alphabets that they've just thrown in there as well. 2 phonetic ones, and then the English alphabet randomly. They're like,
anyway, we are rumbling.
We are very
much rumbling.
We
shouldn't feel the need to stretch this out, really.
No, I don't think so.
I think we don't have that much to say about An Easy Thing, other than, I mean, I don't know. In closing, let's see. I think this is. I would like to reserve judgment until I've read more PACO, IGNACIO, TAIBO II, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This book standalone, I'm not sure. I mean, it's not about, like I said, it was an easy read and it's a brisk read, but I would hesitate. I'm not exactly sure if I'd recommend it either.
Yeah, it might not be the place. It might not be the place to. It might not be the place to start, and we don't know until we read more where that place is.
Yeah,
right?
But then again, it might also be the place to start because it has intrigued me, and I'm glad you chose it. But I can only be honest about the book itself. That it didn't necessarily knock it out the park the way I thought it might do. But no, it has piqued my interest. I'll give it that much. This is the only one of his books you have read as well, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it was a first read for me. So yeah, and I don't disagree. I think I'm
and
exactly
don't forget
the same
as
place.
well.
Yep.
Right. On that boring note,
yes,
anticlimactic
I could stand up and drop my pants or something, but I'm not going to.
Oh, okay. No, you retain your dignity.
Yeah. Yes. Just this once.
Just a bit. See you then.
Ta-da.
Bye.